Uttavardhanya Shri Bhadravarsamanya Sarvasiddhi Om Om A Guru Vajradhara Sumati Asane Karma Uttavardhanya Shri Bhadravarsamanya Sarvasiddhi Om Om A Guru Vajradhara Sumati Muni Shasane Karma Uttavardhanya Shri Bhadravarsamanya Sarvasiddhi Om Vajradhara Sumati Muni Shasane Karma Uttavardhanya Shri Bhadravarsamanya Sarvasiddhi Jetson lama tuje cha nyamdata la tuje sisusu gebeshe sandala tendusu oyun sunge nawa tsidutsul zichin nine solwate betse tichin kolu usule shune ila sampetutu malupa gemelungi to parchingilo Sonneto danti tu shapetse tunken anche usule shune lapchen soni yunsu so padan cherani tu chewara jingilo janju barni nitse tu kuntu niyu peme se jule shune janju tu pe keke kushishin tu ke te la tu par jingilo dagilo na chula chupadan chemin sanjora ne pa shiwadan chudan tu malupa peme lungi tu par jingilo Darnatene seraptam chetan dichentu netetam chetu resekyam ne lama keleme tuchi chekita la sisuso gunkya dewe nantata chala chetsun lame tuje ragune kudan sungi nawadre metu nyamsunya warakepa to parasho kewa kundu yada lama dan dreme cheki pela luchuchi sadan langi yote rapsone Janki go par nurtosho Kudan dagielu Pakyuke sundan dagiena Pakyuke tudan dagi Dunyarme chitu jingialo Makyuke kudan dagielu Makyuke sundan dagiena Makyuke tudan dagi Dunyarme chitu jingialo Muni, Muni, Mahamuni, Shakya Munye Soha. Muni, Muni. Mahamuni Shakya Munye Soa Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakya Amunye Soa Shibukia Jushie Meto Jahari Ravlishin Ni Degen Pati Sangye Shintu Mi Deulwargi Druk Chu Par Sho Yedam Guru Radna Mandala Kaneyatayami Sangye Shudan Sogye Chonamla Chancho Bardu Dani Kyapsuchi Dagi Chishin Kebet Sonamgi Drula Pinche Sangye Drubar Chinye Sangye Chudan Sogye Chonamla Chancho Bardu Dani Kyapsuchi Chin Dagi Chinye Sonangi Drola Penche Sangye Drubar Sho Sangye Chodan Sogye Chonamla Chanchu Bardu Dani Kyapsuchi Dagi Chinye Dipe Chonamgi Drola Chin Drola Penche Sangye Drubar Sho. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. With the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I obtain the state of Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. Good morning. Today, I'll just get right to the point without too much of an introduction, because we have so much to see, and I think that what Atisha brings in his text is already enough. It's not necessary to add more. In another text of Atisha, that I've already taken the commitment to make the translation of this text, and I repeat that it's really quite a short text. And Atisha was about to go back to India after 3 years in Tibet, because in the 11th century, when Atisha was invited and accepted the invitation to go to Tibet and his monastery Vikramalashila in India, the king who invited him swore that after 3 years he would send him back. But after those 3 years, he was going to go back, and he wrote a text. And this text is this moment of where Atisha is leaving, saying goodbye, probably never to return. And in that moment, the king, who was the nephew of the king Chanchubu, he asked him for teachings before leaving, and at that point, Atisha gave he gave some advice. It's quite similar to what we have here, but there's a part of the text where he says, the objects of knowledge are many. The things to know, to learn, are so many. Life is short and goes by quickly. So concentrate on what is beneficial. And then further along he says, now I'm telling you, what I remember the text, it's not verbatim. Because it says, because during the day one is distracted, and at night one is asleep, and life just goes by. So the things to learn, the things to know, there's so many. Like once I went to Tibet, and I asked my master, this abbot, the abbot of Tashi Lumpo, Kashan Losum Putso Rinpoche, and I asked him, I'd like to learn about Dragdup in Tibetan. It's the formation of sounds. It's the knowledge, from the Sanskrit grammar that was passed on into Tibet. So there's like to learn about the energetic part of the sounds, the grammar, and it's very useful if one wants to have a better knowledge of reading mantras, learning the meaning of mantras, but it's quite complex. And when I asked him to teach me, and he said, I'm not the one who has enough, have enough knowledge about the subject. My disciple instead does, but in the end, it'll take so much time to learn, which is nice, but life goes by quickly, and so your job is to learn to then be able to teach others. So he said to me that you of the Dharma, you need to have the legs, the arms, the organs, and your senses, but then to have the ornaments, the earrings or a scarf is not necessary. This would be like earrings on your body. You would spend a lot of time on something that is more intellectual than transformative. And what happens is in our lifetime, we're just taken by so many distractions, aren't we? And here Atisha says, it's a little extreme, as he's saying. And we need to remember also that these teachings were given in Tibet in the 11th century to a specific disciple who was Drumtompa, he wasn't a monk, he was a lay practitioner, which is very interesting in the lineage of Atisha for our life, for our daily life, because most teachings were always transmitted within a monastic tradition, and instead Atisha, even if he is from a monastic tradition, his closest disciple was a lay practitioner, Drumtompa. And so even if he was a lay practitioner, his whole life was dedicated to the Dharma. So we should also remember the context in which these teachings were given, the 11th century Tibet, master to teacher, with a disciple with a high commitment. So it says, verse 17, keep entirely to solitude far beyond the town, and like the carcass of a beast, hide yourself away, remaining free of all attachment. Let's try to understand what Atisha meant when he says keep entirely to solitude. The word solitude here is not the best of translations, in my opinion, because the word solitude for us, from my understanding, is a feeling of. It's more of a feeling than a physical state of being. So someone who lives in solitude is someone who doesn't have company, who feels lonely, feels alone. And instead, this is not at all what this means. What he means here is Etar Gompar Rabnishin. Etar in Tibetan means remote places, far from the distractions, far from chaos. Gompa, which is the same term that in the West we use for places of teachings, and we say we're going to the Gompa. Gompa literally means a place far from distractions. So, in reality, if we look at the Tibetan text, the word solitude doesn't exist at all. It says emta, ta is a limit, so beyond the limits of the city, far beyond the town. So Gompa is also is a place free of distractions. Rabnishin means excellence and to be. So be in an excellent state, far from distractions, which is different from saying keep entirely to solitude. Why do we need to keep be free of distractions? Because life goes by quickly, and sooner or later we're going to die. And what happens is life gets used up with every thought, with every experience, with every sound, every look. As we said, during the day we're distracted, and at night we sleep, and usually we dream of silly things. Every once in a while we have a meaningful dream, but obviously if I fall asleep watching a movie or reading a love story or watching the news, I'm going to dream something connected to all that. Every once in a while, in Tibetan Buddhism, there is a practice called the dream yoga. Practices where one learns how to be aware during a dream, and one uses this dream time to continue to grow spiritually. And every once in a while I see that there's interest in this, that people want to learn this practice, but a prerequisite to be able to do this correctly, the dream yoga, is to have a life with few distractions, and to regularly go to sleep early, wake and just have few distractions. And today it's very difficult to have these conditions. Not impossible, but so keep entirely to solitude, or better, keep far from any distraction. If we were to bring this to our daily life, what could we do? We should give value, worth to our life. Because where does life happen? In every word, in every listening, in every experience. Life is here and now. So it's important for us to give worth to every moment of our being. No. I just. So life is precious. Why is our life precious? Because it's a human life, or is there another reason? I mean, just being born human doesn't necessarily make this life precious. Something is precious when it has two characteristics. One, it's a tool for something important. And on the other hand, it's something difficult to obtain, because what's difficult to get is not necessarily precious. There's some rare sicknesses, and better not to get them. On the other side, what's the basis? The fundamental desire, the basic desire of every human being, of every being, is to be happy, and to not suffer. We've said this so many times. Everyone looks for this in the best way possible. So without making it too long, the ways we normally try to be happy, I talk on a social level, they bring a momentary happiness, but it increases a cycle of suffering, because at the same moment we have these pleasures of pleasurable things. At the same time, instead, we're accumulating resentment, anger, attachment, envy, jealousy, etc., creating more and more this deep cyclic suffering called samsara. It's said that to be able to follow a path that can allow us to reach a state of peace, so-called nirvana, there are three necessary conditions. Have materially the minimum necessary to be able to survive. Have someone who guides us correctly along the path, be it a system that we follow or a physical presence, a path to follow correctly, and have the joy and feel joy in practicing, feel joy in walking this path. When we look around, now I'm just going to try to summarize a little bit. This planet, it's said that there are about 7 billion people. Of these 7 billion, at least 2.5 billion live in total poverty. What does that mean? Try to meditate if you're very hungry. No, what you need is to eat. When we have basic needs, like heat and cold, or hunger, thirst, our survival is nowhere else. When you don't have your basic needs met, it's difficult. It's not impossible, but it's difficult to have the conditions, the ability to observe oneself, to have a deeper view, to generate desire for the spiritual path or enlightenment. Just think about ourselves. If we put our hand, for example, in the hinge of a door, and you close the door, it hurts, doesn't it? When your hand is there, that is imagine your hand, stuck there in the door. Can you observe your mind? Think of all beings, the happiness of all beings, or the correct view of reality. Forget it. Our priority in that moment is to get our hand out of the door hinge. And if there's someone who is pushing the door, then we're going to try to use our other hand to push that person away. Because our priority is to get our hand out of the door. There are too many people who are born like this and live in this constant state of pain and suffering. There's so many people, unfortunately, that live in this state that doesn't allow doesn't allow for them to experience a spiritual path. This is Tsetin Gyurme, together with Sonam, and Children Tsetin is sorry, is is the one who brought Lama Genshin to Tibet the first time. It's the first time that he's come here since the COVID time, etc. We're so happy that he's here. And Sonam and Tsering are here with us. Sorry, the first time that he accompanied him to the West. So yeah, Tsetin was the person who accompanied Rinpoche the first time to the West. And one of his most important and longest sponsors and supporters. So what happens is to be able to have inner space, to be able to dedicate ourselves to the spiritual path, regardless of the religion, we need minimum of our basic needs covered. And unfortunately, there's an enormous quantity of people who do not have these conditions. So we said 2.5 billion live under the poverty line. This means that they wake up in the morning not knowing if they're going to eat. I mean, and also not being able to take care of their health. Another 2.5 billion live just above the poverty line, which means that they live where their entire life is dedicated to surviving. Which means working 16 hours a day, or whatever it is, to have food on the table. It becomes very difficult to have inner space to be able to follow a spiritual path when one needs to spend basically the entire life just thinking about having food to eat. So out of 7 billion, that's 5 billion. There are 2 billion left. Of those 2 billion who, on planet Earth, who have their basic survival covered, let's say, without having to live to survive, even if it's like this, how many of those 2 billion end up just slaves of their own survival? You know, a survival that is as comfortable as possible, where the objective of life is just to survive comfortably. Just think about the people around us, our family members, our friends, etc. How many have awareness, have a self-awareness? How many look to themselves and they want to develop their own qualities, they want to overcome their own inner conflicts and grow as human beings? And how many just live their lives taking taking care of resolving problems and accumulating pleasures. I mean, not that we don't have that as well, but where's the majority? In which category? Even if we just think within religion, if we could do a kind of census of prayers, there was once a movie. There was God was receiving all these requests. Just imagine something like that, where we do like a census of prayers, and we can divide them up into categories: sickness, health, love. I say look with like in parentheses because often it's just desire, but let's say, prayers that say, I want to be with this person, I want to be with that person, I want to be married to that person, etc. Prayers dedicated to work, to studies, to winning the lottery or accumulating material wealth. How many prayers are dedicated, for things to be like this or to be like that? And then on the other hand, maybe a category, which is all the requests, the prayers dedicated to inner development. I want to be more patient. I would like to relate better with other people, with more love. I'd like to have more awareness and love and the necessities, more awareness of the needs of others. I'd like to have a better understanding of the correct view of reality. Which category wins? Even within a spiritual path, very often the objectives are worldly, aren't they? So at this point, if we think there are really very, very few people who have the conditions to have minimum necessary materially, have their needs met, basic needs met, have someone who guides us correctly in our development as human beings, I'm not talking specifically about a religion, and then have also joy in following this path. Is that the majority? I mean, what allows us to have those conditions, to cultivate that which brings us joy and satisfaction and peace? Having these conditions is absolutely unique. Also because sincerely, I don't believe that I'm better than anyone else. I don't believe that we who are here, that we are better than others. We have better conditions, but this doesn't make us better than anyone else. If we had other conditions, we'll see how we would act. When someone finds himself in a condition where he doesn't have food to eat or extreme difficulty, I'd really like to see how you'd act if you had those conditions. Once a teacher of Lama Michel Rinpoche, Geshe Chekawa, a teacher of Lama Michel Rinpoche, he said, imagine that at a certain point you're able to get a machine that can print out money. All legal, totally legal. So you get a printer that just prints money. It's legally, when you don't even need to pay taxes on it. What happens? You get this machine to print out money, but with one condition. At a certain point, you have to give it back, and we don't know when that will be. So maybe we have the machine for decades, or maybe for just a few minutes. What do we do with this machine, this printer? Do we put it in the cellar? No, we put it in the middle of the living room so that It's near the kitchen. So there, as you're printing money, you can go quickly to the bathroom or quickly eat. And we spend, and day and night, we just print out money. I think that that's how it would be. What do we do? I mean, this life is worth more than a money printer. The conditions that we have, we can generate states that generate stability and joy that's worth much more than money. But instead, we put everything on the side because now we need to watch Netflix. Before there used to be bread and circus. Now we have pizza and Netflix. These are distractions of life. And there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong about having fun. It's wonderful to have fun. It's wonderful to live life joyously. It's very important. But one thing is allowing yourself to have fun. Another thing is using up your life just being distracted. So when Atisha says, he says, keep entirely to solitude because life is too precious to just let it be lost in distractions. The distractions are things that bring no benefit, particular benefit. We shouldn't abandon our family or friends or life in general. I mean, the life that we have, no. But we should try to live our family, our friends, our work, every context of life, every corner of our life in a meaningful way. So this really applies well to today's world because we need to be very careful because we can go to a remote place in a cave, in the middle of the mountains far from the city. But if we have our cell phone with us, we have not abandoned anything because the amount of stimuli and distractions that we have in the palm of our hand today is overwhelming. So the point here is we should diminish our distractions and try to take the non-essential sensory stimuli. You can watch a movie, stay with your friends, listen to beautiful music, go dancing, whatever, brings you joy and pleasure, but it's in that moment you do it with awareness, but not as something that just happens because you don't want to think about anything else. There's a difference between choosing something that brings us a moment of joy or pleasure or to our senses with awareness or taking refuge in something because we don't want to think about something else. So the point is try to diminish our distractions. Be with yourself. It says, be with yourself, hide yourself away. Don't depend on the approval of others for your own well-being, your own happiness. Shouldn't depend on the approval of others. When you're alone and you're not well, it means you're in bad company. And that's not a good sign. We need to know how to be well with ourselves. We need to know how to be well with others, but also with ourselves. So know how to be in silence, to be being alone with ourselves is very important. So here he says, hide yourself away, as if you're like hiding from others. It's not that we shouldn't see other people, but it's a path that says first you need to be able to be well with yourself, and then you can dedicate yourself to others. But sometimes what happens is when someone is not well with himself, he's constantly in the need of being in the presence of others. That's clear, isn't it? And being constantly, trying constantly to find the presence of others or being in the presence of others, one ends up basically escaping from oneself, hiding from himself. So it's important every once in a while to have the courage to look at ourselves in the eyes and say, okay, this is not going so well, this isn't going so well, I need to work on this aspect or that aspect. And it's an important experience, I think, for everyone, is simply just being alone with oneself. And at the beginning, when someone's by himself, maybe many thoughts come out. And then we let these thoughts calm down. It's important to find good company with yourself. Once you find good company in yourself, then at that point that you want to be alone, no, at that point you need to go and find others and help others. So it's not that the objective is to be able to be well with oneself. So I invite you all in your life to have moments of silence where you're alone with awareness, not because you don't have anyone around, and you're feeling sad and you're a victim of the world. No, you choose, okay, I'm going to go take a walk in the mountains by myself. I'm going to choose a half day or a full day to stay quiet, to stay with, stay reading. I allow myself to listen to myself, because what happens is when there's a very loud noise, the softer noises cannot be heard. If I have very, very soft sounds, but then, construction work starts, we won't be able to hear it. If we have many thoughts, then we can't hear our own intuition. When we have many external distractions, then we are not listening to our deeper feelings, emotions. It's for this reason that it's important every once in a while to create this silence, it's kind of like decanting, like as we do with wine, and so then little by little, the dust settles, we can say. Uh, and then the best comes out. If I see in the story of important people, and even in the West here, I think of two people in a modern society known by everyone. Maybe Bill Gates, uh, Bill Gates, Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, for example, both. What they always did when they needed to understand something or take important decisions, they would stay alone in silence. Bill Gates, from what I understand, he would do a week to reflect, and he would go into the mountains. He would take all the books about that subject, and he would go to this mountain chalet, and without a phone and without any contact with anyone, he would take a week alone to study and reflect on a subject, so that he could then take a fully thought out decision. Steve Jobs, it says that when he needed to take important decisions, he would go out walking alone. It's not that one needs to take an important decision. They call all the experts of the world, and then they talk for hours to discuss it. No, one needs to be alone in silence to have more inner clarity. So in our lives, especially when we need to take important decisions, it's important to have these moments of silence where we can be where there's silence from distractions, silence from other thoughts, and we can have that space to reflect on what's important. It's important to create this habit with awareness, this habit of being alone. On the other side, those who don't want to be with others, because for some people, some of us, being with others means aspects of ourselves that we don't want to face. So Lama Ganchen would often remind us that those who want to talk a lot need to be quiet. Those who want to be quiet need to talk. Those who want to travel need to stay home. Those who want to stay home should travel. We need to go outside, go beyond our comfort zone to be able to face our own habits and be able to transform them. Here's the part that says, like a carcass of a beast, and stay free of all attachment. This, do not. This refers mostly to not being attached to our own image and what others think of us, how they look at us, how they see us. Oh, if I go to meditate far away, this verse is specifically, it refers to those meditators who would go far away to meditate, and the advice is you shouldn't be attached to how people see you, even after death, what happens to our body. It's not our business. I remember a few years ago, my mother organized everything for her to the funeral of someone. They looked at, they paid everything before, organized everything for the funeral, and at a certain point, the person said, "Okay, there are 2 rooms where we could do the wake, so." And then the person who was organizing the funeral said, I'm not going to be there, so you, either room is fine. Seriously, we're not going to be there. What does it change? I mean, how it's going to be managed? Our after death, our funeral. But often we're very attached to this, aren't we? For example, there was an uncle of a friend, because he was because he bought his own coffin because he was afraid his children weren't going to buy the coffin that he wanted, and he has it stored in his house. So many things. I remember once I heard that when Princess Diana died, for example, in England, I mean, it was from one minute to the next, and the one to organize the funeral, she had to organize a funeral of that stature was not easy. So they actually took the everything that had been organized for and prepared already for the death of the Queen. She had prepared, or her funeral had been prepared with so much care, and apparently the Queen was upset that it was used for Diana. Among us, I don't think, we don't have funerals for kings and queens here, but there is a certain level of attachment for our own funeral. And here, Atisha is saying, just take care of what continues, not what you leave behind. So the conclusion of this verse 17 is, our life is too precious to let it just be used up by distractions. So we need to use every moment, because it's so precious. Tatu yitam ten chashing lelyon anyunle sem chun se. Be forever firm in your commitment. Should laziness or lethargy take hold, be sure to enumerate your faults and recall the essence of yogic discipline. Tatu yitam tenchashing leyon nile sem chunse detse dala dentrashing dushunipo tren paracha. What is laziness? I have a definition that is something that I myself I've had to face often. Today, I'm happy that I have taken a few steps, not completely, but something I've done. And once I was able to give a definition to laziness, that really helped me. I think that laziness is an inner state that unites two contradictory aspects. Laziness is where we have the certainty, the conceptual certainty of something, the importance of something, united with the lack of desire for that same thing. I know that I should study, but I don't feel like it. I know that it would be good for me to meditate, but I don't feel like it. I know that it would be good to follow that diet, but who can manage that? I know that it would be good to do this, that, or the other, but I just don't feel like it. Because, the truth is that when we want something, we do it, don't we? Laziness is there, where it was, where it's something that is beneficial. We know there's something beneficial, but we don't want to do it. I mean, you're lazy. You're lazy about not doing what you should do. So it's a clear manifestation of incoherence between thought and feeling. So it becomes really important for us to try to direct our thoughts and somehow direct also our feelings. But here it says, be sure to be forever firm in your commitment. Yitam, tencha, yitam. Yi is mind, tam is commitment. This is like the commitment of the mind, is where we see something's important, but it's not easy, and so we need to take a commitment to do it. It's something extremely important. The importance of commitment is because we're made up of habits. Why do we take commitments? Because we're made up of habits. And our habits don't always match with what's good for us, align with what's good for us. Once, one of my masters, it was a little bit to say that he got angry is maybe not the right word, or maybe it is. One of his disciples at the monastery in the south of India started to criticize some people because they weren't following advice given by another teacher, another master. And he went there. I remember he said, it's easy to criticize the fact that someone doesn't respect advice. Where for you, it's where for you there's no effort is required. For you, that advice or that commitment for you is like breathing. Instead, it's not that we don't need to take a commitment to breathe, do we? Maybe taking a commitment to breathe with awareness, yes, but just breathing, no. Because it comes naturally, but there are many actions that we do that are good for us and we don't do enough, and that are harmful that we actually do. And that's where we need to take a commitment, where we say, this I need to avoid, or this other thing I will do more of it, even if it's difficult, because I know that it's beneficial to me and others. When we go further along in the teachings of mind training Lojong, there's a very important point called the commitments of Lojong. We're not going to look at them now, but they're on page 43. And there's, for example, the number 5, commitment number 4 and 5 says, don't speak of others' incomplete qualities, and don't concern yourself with others' business. Just mind your own business. Don't speak of others' incomplete qualities. Don't criticize others. We could spend hours talking about why criticizing others is negative. But is it easy to not criticize others? No, that's why we need a commitment. I recognize the importance of not lying. Every once in a while, I feel like lying, and so that's why I take a commitment not to lie. The problem that today's world, our word is worth always less and less. This is a feeling that is that is quite widespread. If it's not signed, dated with legal consequences, then it's not worth anything. But where's the worth of a commitment taken with others, and especially with oneself? In the Dharma practice, a spiritual practice, our ability to respect taken commitments is extremely important towards ourselves and towards others. So here it says, be forever firm in your commitment. You take a commitment, don't give it up. It doesn't matter what happens. Commitments need to be respected, even if it's difficult. If at a certain point there are no longer the conditions to uphold that commitment, if we see at a certain point our commitment has no more meaning, or could actually is no longer beneficial, we can give back that commitment with awareness. But we don't break a commitment out of laziness or because we just don't feel like it. Commitments need to be upheld. Briefly, I advise you to take commitments for a specific amount of time, a short amount of time, like a maximum of 1 month. And then after 1 month, you can renew or not. Like once I heard that there's a community that's the Damakur here near Turin, there's a community. They have different rules in society in general, and they have a system, like how to live in the family. The familial structure is quite different, and they have a different wedding, a marriage structure, because the weddings are for a specific amount of time. So people want to get married. Say, okay, you want to get married you can be married for 1 year. So first of all, what commitment do you want to take between yourselves? So it needs. So the wedding, the marriage, requires a mutual commitment for some something related to inner qualities like patience or etc. After 1 year, the couple can renew, and then with the renewal of the wedding, of their marriage, they renew a different, or they take a different commitment between each other, and then after a few times, they can take it for 5 years. I thought it was very interesting. People close to me, it happens that people close to me, they ask me for a marriage blessing. I suggested them to renew their marriage vows every year, because when you take a commitment like forever, as soon as one is feeling tired, one says, "Oh, like this forever, I'm not going to be able to handle it. But instead you say, okay, it's just another 3 months, I can manage. But what happens that in those 3 months, things change. And when those 3 months are up, one is not in that same state. And then they look back and say, okay, it's something positive. We can do this in 1 more year. Because we have this tendency to look towards the future, thinking that the whole future is going to be like this present moment. When something beautiful happens, we want it to be like that forever. They live happily ever after. And when something bad times, one says, I can't live like this forever, but it's not going to happen. I mean, a little bit joking, but when people come to me saying, well, I can't live like this forever, I'll say, don't worry, because it's going to get better or it's going to get worse, but it's not going to stay like this. If it's going to get worse, then enjoy this moment now. And if it's going to get better, then don't worry so much, because it's not going to stay like this. It's not going to stay like this. So the commitments, vows, if you take it for a specific amount of time, one lives that commitment with more intensity, with more seriousness, and it should be renewed every once in a while. I would say to start with commitments, from like full moon to full moon, new moon to new moon, or like the end of the month to the end of the month. A new moon is a very favorable moment to take a new commitment, because there's a growth, and there one starts to take the habit of taking commitments, respecting commitments. And then if there are moments of laziness, and let's remember that there are 4 types of laziness. I mean, normally more normally 4 types of laziness. There's the laziness of just not wanting to do something. There's the laziness that says, oh, I should do it. It's really important, but I'll do it afterwards. It's the laziness of postponing, of procrastinating. Then there's the laziness that says, no, it's incredibly important to do this thing. I need to do it, but right now I need to do something else. So we do something useless to avoid doing something useful. I think this has happened to all of us, and me too. It's something so crazy about this form, something crazy about this type of laziness. We know that we know that we're tricking ourselves, but you know it, but you still do it. We're strange. And the last type of laziness is the worst type, is where so the laziness is getting worse as we're going on. So this fourth one says, okay, no, this thing, yes, I need to do it. It's very important. Oh, it would be so wonderful if I did do it, but I'm just not able. I'd never be able to do this. Just not even going to try because I'm not able. And one puts oneself down out of laziness, like, oh, I should meditate single-pointedly. Oh, if I could do that, I would stay. I would stay, you know, but sitting down for 3 years, sitting down for 3 hours single-pointedly, focused on one object, I'd never be able to do that. Well, why don't you start with 5 minutes? You need to start where you are. So, so it's important to respect our own abilities, and the length of our own legs. But laziness is quite terrifying because one main characteristics of laziness, the function, the action of laziness, is to make us lose opportunities. It makes it so that we have conditions for something and we don't take advantage of them. There's the possibility to do something and we just lose it, let it slip away. When I look at myself, the years that I was studying in India, I could have, given the time that I had available, I could have dedicated myself to memorizing texts and prayers, much more than I did. But I was blatantly lazy. I would say, oh, but I'm Western and we don't memorize. What's important is to understand the meaning. It's not so important to memorize things by heart. And then one day, one of my teachers, Geshe Chekawa, one of my philosophy teachers at the time, his role was discipline master, and he needed also to organize exams that year. And twice a year we had memorization exams, which were about a minimum of 50 pages, Tibetan pages, basically 100 pages. And he would come to me. So he came to me and he said, in a month and a half, there's the examination for memorization, and you know that the minimum requirement is 50 pages. How much have you memorized so far? I answered 13. And he said, it's 50, right? I said, oh, we Westerners, we're not used to memorizing, etc., 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 blah, 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 blah. And the exam that was, the exam that was worth, moving up in the year was the one for debate. And I was really good at debate. And then he said to me, if you don't put effort into what is difficult for you, where are you going to put your effort? That really touched me because I had this image of myself as being someone who was putting in a lot of effort. I studied a lot. I would wake up quite early. I would spend much of the day studying. I would go to lessons I didn't even need to go to, I would do more lessons than I had to, even going to years, the future years, you know, and a lot of it was also, I would go to debate sessions,
I would go to debate sessions from 6 to 9, and I would stay from 10 to 11:30. Um, I would go to debate instead of staying just reciting what we're supposed to memorize. I would so in so I would stay until like 11 to skip having to stay memorizing. And when he said that, I, I saw I saw my own laziness. And then at that time, I said, okay, with a, I want to learn in this month and a half. I really want to memorize as much as I can. And after, I got to that exam, to I got to the exam with 67 pages, having started with the 13, you know, and unfortunately it didn't happen in future years, but it showed me that when we put energy into something, we can do so much. And today, when I look back, I see there's so many things that I could have memorized, that, things that would be useful to me. Today, I don't have the conditions to do that with all the responsibilities I have. At that time I didn't have these responsibilities, and so I've lost that opportunity without feeling guilty about it. I mean, just awareness. So laziness, it kills opportunities. It takes away the opportunities we have in front of us. When we realize that we're taken by laziness, what should we do? We should enumerate our enumerate the we should list the defects of laziness, and we should recall the essence of yogic discipline. So recall the essence of discipline. The word yogic is not really here. Um, it could also be translated as a spiritual discipline, but that word yogic is not here. So recall the essence of discipline. It's also love towards oneself. It's the commitment to do what is good for us and abandon what is harmful. So let's try really to keep the commitments that we have. And as soon as we see laziness come out, we list all the defects of laziness. And now we're not going to get into so many, all the details, but it, it, it mostly, keeps us from taking advantage of our opportunities, and um, it further, it, it further familiarizes us with our bad habits. But if we don't have an inner discipline and we don't uphold our commitments to do what is good but not easy, our tendency is just to repeat our own habits. And we're simply going to reinforce the habits that we already have. Just a reminder, about 25 years ago, Bernard says, when Rinpoche was reviewing you. He's saying that Rinpoche, Bernard was saying that about 25 years ago, Lama Ganchen he was talking to other people. I wasn't there, but they were talking about me, apparently, and he said being lazy is being peaceful. I mean, Rinpoche could always turn anything, he could make anything positive. So, yeah, he's peaceful. Yeah, it's a little lazy too. So, anyway, the the important thing is that commitments need to be maintain, taken and maintain, even when it's difficult on a very practical level. If we see that it's not really beneficial, then we don't. But if it's beneficial, mid, long term, even if it's difficult, we uphold it. But instead, if we take a commitment, but the reason for that commitment or vow is no longer valid for whatever reason, then we can give back this commitment. But it's something very serious. It should be done with a lot of awareness. Let's go forward. Kalden shedan tompetse shinde somparata wardang. Should you chance upon another, take so okay, because it said before, you're far from others, but when you do meet other people, should you chance upon another, if you meet someone else, shide, speak calmly and sincerely, peacefully. So it says, shide sompar dawardang, taking care not to frown or grimace. Chanyin, and always taking care not to frown or grimace, and always maintaining a cheerful smile. Taktu means always, and tu means a smile. So always maintaining a cheerful smile. So eliminate any sign of anger, and always stay with a big smile. So when you meet other people, when you relate with others peacefully and sincerely, with love, with affection, with attention. When we find ourselves in front of others, we try to see others and appreciate them, give the best of ourselves to others with an attitude of love, with sincerity and love. We avoid, so we speak calmly, peacefully, and sincerely, and taking care not to frown or grimace, or without any sign of indifference. And we try as much as we can to stay with the smile on our face. I, I, I think many of you remember Lama Lawan. Many of you didn't have the great opportunity of knowing him, Lama Lawan. He lived in Milan for many, many years. And he was a healer. He knew Tibetan medicine well, but one of the most special qualities of Lama Lawan was he was this verse put into practice perfectly. Wherever he went, he had a smile. He was full of joy and kindness towards everyone. Everyone loved him, and no matter where he went, he around Marco Polo, Milan, everyone knew him. He was so kind. He was just really smiling with everyone. He's really a wonderful example. Because when we interact with others, there's a double effect. We reinforce a habit, and at the same time, we influence others. So it becomes very important the way in which we interact. So even if we're not feeling good with ourselves, we should try to be kind and give the best of ourselves to others. Today, different friends have come from afar, coming to visit us after a long time. It's important that no matter where we are or with whom we are, we should try, first of all, just to be kind, to give to others the best of ourselves. And a very important characteristic is is to try to put ourselves at the service of others. Rinpoche had a way of talking about this. He would say, it's important to be ego-friendly. It was a play on eco-friendly, you know. He's a friend of the environment, so so he took eco-friendly, and then with his English, he would say that he spoke secret English, and so often he would turn words around, he'd play words, and these are two friends from China, Peter and June, who have been supporting the center for many, many years, and we're very happy that they're here. So Rinpoche, his term that he would use, with his English, every once in a while he would turn things around a little bit. He would say, he would use this term to be ego-friendly. It was really interesting because he had this unique ability that I never knew with anyone else, to put himself at the service of everyone he met. What does that mean, to be at the service of someone else? It means that your happiness, your needs are more important than my own. And so I put myself at your service. How can I help you? I put myself at your disposal, and that means also adapting yourself to others. What we often do is that when we find ourselves in front of others, our tendency is to judge. If the other corresponds to what we think is the right way of being and doing, or how we should be doing, instead, then that's fine. But if it seems like a strange behavior or something, that we think is different, then right away we have a kind of judgment. We judge. And Rinpoche often, he taught us the importance of adapting to others. Because if we say the prayer, may all beings, have happiness and the causes of happiness, but instead in practice we would judge others and see how they are, and depending on that see if we help them or not. No, instead of first looking our needs, our desires, we should try to remember that we are on the path of bodhisattva. We're in the Mahayana tradition, and we dedicate ourselves to serving others. So when we meet someone, we smile, and this comes out in the way we look at someone, the way we smile at someone. Atisha reminds us that when we chance upon another, when we meet someone, we don't lose this opportunity. Rinpoche he would have this play on words, and he would say, like, ego-friendly, ego-cut. Let's be friendly with the ego of the other. By doing that, you're cutting your own, which is our final objective. It's part of our path, isn't it? So it doesn't mean underestimate oneself or sacrifice one's own desire or needs. It also means finding the joy, the honor the pride, in the good sense of the word, of putting oneself at the service of others. So let's try, when we are with other people, we should try to see others, give importance to others, and smile. And we show this love with a beautiful smile. Try to speak sincerely and calmly, peacefully. And those who had the very special opportunity and fortune of knowing Lama Ganchen, he was an example of this. Oh, people say, oh, well, that was Rinpoche. I could never be like that. No. He was here to show us that we can be like him, and we need to put effort in that. So each one of us, in our small way, we need to give the best of ourselves when we're with others. Our way of expressing ourselves verbally, our way of showing ourselves physically too. You know, the opposite of this that happens sometimes is to, is to, you know, that we treat people like emotional garbage. I don't know if that expression gives the idea. In Italy, they have there's this idea that I need to I need to let off steam and show my frustration, because I just need to let off steam. So then I've just let go of all of my frustration, etc., and I've dumped it all onto you. No, no, we shouldn't try to treat other people as if they're like a garbage bin, an emotional garbage bin where we just throw our fears and our anger, etc. And we should, maybe we could ask someone's help. And one thing is going to you to someone else. I go to you and say, "Can you help me?" We can share feelings, so that I can try to verbalize something to have more clarity. That's okay, but not going to someone just to throw on your frustrations. In these years, I've learned something, and I didn't learn this in India, in the monastery, because, in the monastery I lived with people who spoke very seldom. But when I came to the West, I saw that, some people say things to mean something else. Or often people talk not because they want to say something, but because they want to just share and manifest their own feelings. So I learned somehow to listen beyond the words. Um, I I grew up. Following the studies of dialectics and debate. Where every word had a specific meaning and use. Instead, here people talk. They say something, but they're actually feeling something else. So instead, let's try not to just dump onto others. If we have a certain level of intimacy with someone, um, and then we know that we're feeling frustrated, and we can have more awareness of this, and try not to dump onto someone else, but to speak more calmly about our feelings. This attitude of being at the service of others, I don't know, we have this idea that being in the service of someone else makes us inferior. Instead, the most marvelous people I have ever met are all, they were all and are at the service of others, and there's nothing inferior about any of them. And there's something noble about serving others. So when we're with others, just in a few words, when we're with others, we put ourselves at the service and we offer the best. Gyundu Shendang Dompetse Sena Metzing. Sorry. Generally, when you encounter others, do not be miserly, but delight in giving and forsake entirely feelings of envy. Gyundu Shendang. When you see others constantly, Gyundu means constantly, with constancy, not every once in a while, when you meet other people. Sen, so without, so don't be miserly, but delight in giving. Have joy, feel joy in giving. So I'm not giving because it's a rule to follow. No, generosity should always be joined with joy. Because my personal experience, what I saw for myself and around me, is that when one gives to someone else, you can give materially, you can give love, you can give attention, you can give recognition, and you could give knowledge, you can give, and this naturally brings feelings of joy when you give. And sincerely, my personal experience is that I've always felt more joy in giving than receiving. And Lama Ganshen reminded us there's also the generosity of knowing how to receive. I had to put a little practice in this because, people have kindly given me so many things, but often it wasn't the object itself, but this act of giving, this act of receiving, and receiving is also an act of generosity. And when I talk about this, it reminds me of the time that once I had to refuse. I always took everything at the beginning. So Lama Ganshen was always reminding me of the generosity, reminding me that receiving something was also an act of generosity. Because at the beginning I would say, oh no, I don't need anything. So I always took everything, with joy. But once I had to refuse because once someone brought me a couple of rabbits, and I thought, what am I gonna do with 2 rabbits? How would I manage 2 rabbits? And at this point I said, okay, you have other rabbits, don't you? And he said, yes, I have many rabbits. And I said, okay, I accept your condition. I accept your rabbits, this gift, I take these rabbits, but I don't have the means to be able to take care of them. So please take care of my rabbits. So that was the condition. But anyway, it's also beautiful to receive. This exchange is beautiful, and this takes us to another aspect that we human beings, we need exchange. We need to interact among us. We are social beings, and everything we're able to do it because we depend on others. Look here, this moment when we're here together, I'm deeply, deeply grateful to each one of you because I can assure you that I've learned more by teaching than by studying and having to transmit into explaining. I've learned more by teaching than my own studies. So I feel that I'm receiving more than I'm giving, but it's still an exchange. And this is possible because there are so many people, each one doing his own, on a material level, on every aspect, from love and work and sharing. it makes this all possible. And we human beings were not made to be isolated from each other without interacting. And when we interact with generosity, the basis of generosity is your happiness is important to me. And so I share with you what I have because your happiness is important to me. I share material things, I share affection, I share my time, I share physical help or knowledge, I share spiritual path. And miserliness is based on fear of lacking, not having enough. When there's generosity, naturally we feel that we live in abundance because I can't give if I don't have enough. I can't give if I don't have the certainty of having enough for myself. So where there's generosity, naturally there's a feeling of abundance. And this is another aspect too, because what determines if something is enough or not is they're not the number or quantity, but it's an inner attitude to the value that we ourselves give. So even if we take St. Francis, then in this simple prayer of St. Francis, it's by giving that we receive. Buddha Shakyamuni described six practices to follow, six qualities to develop, and generosity, morality, patience, enthusiastic effort, concentration, and wisdom. Nagarjuna explains clearly. Nagarjuna was one of the most important masters in Buddhism about 1,500 years ago, a little bit more, I think. I'm terrible with years. Nagarjuna explains clearly that the reason why Buddha explained generosity first is because if one doesn't have this ability to share, he cannot generate the necessary energy for the rest of the spiritual path, which is accumulating merits. Yesterday we talked about this, creating causes for states of happiness and well-being, the so-called merits. And one of the easiest ways to create virtuous actions, merit, is by sharing with others. If we see in all sadhanas, for example, these practices of meditation, there's an enormous importance is given, even the recitation of mantra, for example. We practice the four generosities in visualizations when we do the mantra recitation. And within the Vajrayana path, there's the commitment to practice 6 times a day the 4 types of generosities. The Tibetans, they have this incredible ability to maintain commitments with a little bit of, by being a little sly. So because you need to practice the 4 generosities 6 times a day, they divide it 3 times in the morning, 3 times in the evening in visualization. So there are verses that can be recited 3 times in the morning, 3 times in the evening to direct the mind to practice, protect it, to cover these 4 generosities, to fulfill the commitment. But in our daily lives, it's really important how we interact with others and how we share what we have, remembering that it's not just about giving materially, it's about smiling, it's helping, it's sharing knowledge, sharing friendship, experiences. It's giving to others because the other is important. We share with society because the common good is more important than my personal well-being. So Atisha reminds us that when you're with others, serna, here in Tibetan it says, do not be miserly, have joy, delight in giving. And then, and always be patient. What is patience? Patience means to not. So, at the basis, when we're practicing patience, there is something that could generate aversion. It's something we don't like, but we're able to not react, with body, speech, or mind in front of that. We're Another level of patience is where I have a path to follow. There are difficulties. I don't allow that difficulty to take me away from the path. It's another form of patience, and the same word in Tibetan is used. So, yeah, yeah. Sorry, I jumped a verse. Yeah, I read it in Tibetan, but here, so actually, so. Okay, sorry about patience. That comes after, but that's fine. Here, too, patience is this ability to not react with aggression. Going back, it says instead, do not be miserly, but delight in giving. Okay, and forsake entirely feelings of envy and jealousy. What's the difference between envy and jealousy? Envy is aversion. I have aversion towards you because you have something that I would like to have and I don't have it. It's a really bad feeling, isn't it? I don't like you. I have aversion for you because you get more attention than I do. I'd like to get that attention. I have aversion for you because you have the wealth that I'd like to have. I have aversion towards you because you have a social position that I'd like to reach. I have aversion for you because you have a physical trait that I'd like to have. You're taller, you're more handsome. I'd like to be like that, but I'm not. I have aversion towards you because you're younger than me. I mean, who knows? Everyone has their own. But the logic behind envy is I have aversion towards someone because he or she has something that I would like to have. And what's worse is that with envy, one, one not only doesn't get what he wants to get, but it suffers even more and creates conflict. Jealousy instead comes from the fear of losing what one thinks one has. I have aversion towards someone out of fear of losing what I think I possess. This is my glass. I want it so much. And then at a certain point, someone comes close. But I don't want. When I see someone too close to my glass, to I feel aversion because I'm afraid of losing it glass. But jealousy instead weakens our relationships. It doesn't reinforce them at all. It really weakens them. You agree, don't you? So another time, these mental defilements, they are really stupid inner attitudes. Jealousy, for example, to not lose, I do everything possible to lose. If I find myself in the position of the glass, and the other, and one is jealous of me, it's very tiresome. It's not at all pleasurable. The other says, trust me, you shouldn't be afraid. And instead, the other one says, And so it creates distance. So jealousy does not reinforce a relationship, it really weakens it. If one is jealous because it doesn't want to lose, but by doing like that, he creates a lot of distance. In the case of this specific point, he's talking mostly of envy, but often where we talk about envy, we talk also about jealousy, even though they're two different feelings. Here it says, no matter where you are, put yourself at the service of someone. Put yourself at the service of others. Share with others, and don't be envious. Abandon every form of envy. To abandon every form of envy, we need to try, first of all, not to compare ourselves with others. And on the other side, understand that we are all on our own life's path. And a key point to eliminate envy is the awareness that I am and I have the conditions that are possible to have. In other words, I'm trying to summarize quickly, even though it's difficult for me. One of the best antidotes to envy is the awareness of the perfection of my life. Let me explain myself better. The example of the leaf that falls from the tree. When the leaf falls from the tree, it falls in a certain position. If we were to analyze and we were to ask ourselves, why does the leaf fall exactly there, not a centimeter here or there? Why that exact position? Is it just by chance? Or is it because the wind was in a certain way, the atmospheric pressure, a car that passed by, the child that was playing with the ball, the insect that was eating a leaf, and so many other causes? Oh, because the temperature and the tree is preparing itself for the winter, bringing the energy deep in its roots, and the leaf is starting to dry out. So there's an infinite number of causes and conditions and interactions that brought that leaf to fall in that exact moment, in that exact place. Is that clear? What does that mean? It means that that position where the leaf fell is absolutely perfect. Perfect, understood as being that it couldn't be different given the causes and conditions at the moment. Someone could say, oh, but it would have been better for me if it fell somewhere else. Yeah, for me too. But given the causes and conditions, it's perfect because it couldn't be different. But if the child wasn't playing under the tree, it would have fallen somewhere else. It would have fallen somewhere else. Yes, probably. But, every time you say, if this, then the result would be different, sure. But once we see that where the leaf fell it is in a perfect condition, then we let's pass from this metaphor to our life. Is our life perfect, or is it just all happening by chance? With all of the problems and difficulties that we all have, this present moment is the result and the causes and conditions that have interacted among themselves. If you have this that I don't have, is because the causes and conditions that you have created have brought you to have this, and the causes and conditions in my life did not give that same result. So have aversion towards someone because they have something that I don't have is, is if I want something to be different, I need to put energy not in the aversion towards someone, but into creating the causes that will bring that result. So reflecting on interdependence helps also to face and combat envy. Let's move on. Shenki Semye. This is important and in some cases not so understood. To protect the minds of others, Shenki Semye, Sungwe Ching, it says to protect the minds of others, be sure to avoid all quarrels, avoid all fights, all discussions, and remain always patient and forbearing, and always be patient. In Tibetan, it's just patient, forbearing. In Italian, translated also as tolerant. It's I've known very few translators who have been able to translate literally instead of interpreting. It's a it's not easy to translate from Tibetan because the context really changes the meanings of the words. But here it says to protect the minds of others. Be sure to avoid all quarrels. Don't get into discussions where there's no reason to, how can I say, to make someone try to understand something differently. Very often people quarrel not because there's a benefit in discussing, but because one wants to just be right. There's a very strong attitude of wanting the other to see my reasoning, to see my point of view, and it's almost more important than what the other thinks. So we should not be attached to being right. We shouldn't depend on the approval of others. The approval of our point of view. If someone thinks differently from us, and we think that that's harmful, and there's openness for dialogue where we can try with kindness and generosity to help the other person to see differently, then welcome, but not to quarrel, not to argue. Just look in these modern times in society today, these so-called public TV debates. For me, the TV, I hardly ever watch it, but the few times I have seen it, they don't seem like dialogues, but they seem like monologues. Two monologues where there's not a subject that is discussed to get to an agreement. No, instead we just one says his point of view, the other says the other, and they just argue and fight. Years ago, someone argued with me, and someone close to me. It was someone close to me, and there was this kind of argument, and there was a specific argument, and at a certain point, this person just deviated completely from that subject and looked for my weak points in me. And then I said, I was upset, not because we argued, but I said, and talking later, I said, why did you have to change the subject and, look for a weak point to hit me? And I said, why did you do that? I said, oh, because we were arguing, and that's what you do when you argue. I said, oh, sorry, I didn't know the rules. So fighting, means to try to hit the other, not to try to look for common ground. So when we find ourselves faced, with someone with a different point of view, where we don't see the basis for a constructive dialogue, let's try to protect our mind and the mind of the other person, protect from anger, and etc., without trying get into conflict. I don't know if that's clear. And with this, I don't mean that there shouldn't be dialogue. No, there should be dialogue. But where there's a dialogue, there's a very important basis. For example, in certain cases, I had to wait a long, long time to be able to open up a dialogue, to talk, because I found myself in situations where the other person just wanted to be right, and there wasn't any space to talk, to dialogue. But when the other person is not being defensive or ready to counterattack, and if you let your, if the guard is down, so to speak, then that opens up the doors to be able to talk. Once the 10th Panchen Lama, one of the masters of Lama Michel Rinpoche, he invited him for dinner. There were many people from the government, from central Tibet present, and he said, before talking about what we need to talk about, first let's relax. So let's eat, let's drink, we talk about this, that, and the other, to then talk about what's important. Once you have taken away the defense of the other, then you find the common ground. But when you start from the line of defense, it's difficult to find this common ground. So we need to be careful in our daily lives, starting with our family and and at work, and even when we're online and even with social media. Don't try to hit dialogue, but to dialogue you need to have this desire to converse and to dialogue from both sides. You need to be ready and open for a discussion, and where there's no basis for a discussion, do not quarrel, because that just brings more and more conflict on both sides. So to protect the minds of others and my own, I avoid arguing. I avoid quarrels, and I try always to be patient no matter where I go. Then let's try to create the conditions to create dialogue. It's happened to me many times to be in front of someone who had a behavior that I didn't agree with, but in that moment, it wasn't at all useful to say anything about it. And if at that moment I'd said, you were wrong, I would have received, oh, but you're not good either, etc., etc. I don't know if you've ever tried to say something to someone where there's no openness to talking, and instead of talking about the subject at hand, the person totally deviates and tries to hit you at a low point. It's better to wait for the right conditions to create a kind of dialogue. It's better to welcome, which doesn't mean to never speak. It means have the wisdom to look for the right moment, and create this space, this moment. In the Vajrayana Buddhist tradition, a fundamental point is called samaya. Samaya literally means commitment, but it also means this connection between two people. If our samaya is pure, it means that we trust each other. There's transparency. If our samaya is not pure, there's difficulty, there's conflict between us. And it's said that when the samayas are broken, when there's no longer this purity between two people, etc., what what needs to be done to purify the samaya, to clean this relationship. It's said that one should have a party, have a moment of pleasure shared, because if we have, there's something that's not going right between us, and we want to be together, we want to meet, the chances that that conflict is greater, and instead, if there's distance or conflict between two people, instead of talking about the object of the conflict, um, they should experience something pleasurable together. Okay, we've understood. It's clear that we don't agree about this thing, but let's try to have. Let's try to share something pleasurable together. We eat together, we drink together, and this is the Gana Chakra. Was this offering of tzog? It's a meeting. Gana Chakra originally. These were the great parties where the central point was being happy together, because once we're well and happy together, we can talk about anything with clarity. Often you don't even need to talk, because all the tensions just naturally melt away and that conflict dissipates. So this teaches us that when we have conflict with someone, we shouldn't focus on the conflict, but find common ground, find this meeting point between the people and put emphasis there. When that meeting point is stable and strong, that gives the basis to heal the conflict. That instead, if we try to work just on the conflict, the tendency is to see who is stronger, and harmony is harmony is not found, but there's often you just see who wins, and that's not the objective at all. So at home, I think it's happened. I think it's happened to all of us to have conflict, with a family member, for example. Can happen, you know. Can it happen that you've never had a conflict with a family member? No, I mean with friends, it's normal. But the problem with conflicts, is that when they're nourished, and and then when you focus on that conflict, but instead, I have a conflict, we have a conflict between us. There's no longer the transparency as before, or the spontaneity. There's conflict between us. Before we talk about it, before we try to clarify what happened and why and how, sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. But before that, we need to find our common ground. Find to be well together. Do something where we're happy together, and based on that, we can then construct harmony. This reminds me of advice that I didn't receive in the monastery, but it's advice from my great grandmother. When I was born, I had all four great grandparents alive, and one of my great grandmothers, she was very direct. She talked a lot. She was full of joy. I didn't know her very well. I was very young when she died, but my mother was very close to her. And once the great grandmother gave this advice to my mother when she was about 12. It was said that she used to talk openly with God. And at the end of the day, she would tell God all the gossip of the family. And so my mother, who was there nearby, she learned the whole story of the family. Oh, God, this because this and because of that. And one day she said to my mother, I had a relationship with your grandfather for many, many years, and we were always happy together. And I want to share the secret with you, the secret of a happy couple. And my mother was about 12 years old, and my great grandmother was about 85 at the time, and she said every time you and your grandfather didn't agree about something, we would talk. We would talk until there was clarity between us, and we would not go to bed without making love. What does this mean? There's a conflict. We try clarity. And then we try to we try clarity, and then we find this common ground, and then we do something that's pleasurable and beautiful together, and we don't start, you know, okay, we don't just focus exclusively on the conflict. Okay, where then one just looks to the right and the other one looks to the left, and then it kind of just stays. No, regardless of the kind of relationship it is, when there's conflict, we clarify, but we finish with something positive and pleasurable so that we go in that direction, and we don't nourish the conflict itself. How did I get to my great-grandmother's advice? Do not cultivate quarrel. Do not cultivate conflict. Try to protect other people's minds from quarrel, from jealousy. We try to respect other people's limits and construct harmony. Noga meching sardrome tatu tsani tu parcha. No garame. Do not flatter others or be fickle and disloyal. Even in friendships, don't flatter. Don't give compliments that are not sincere. Even among friends, don't flatter, and don't be fickle or volatile. Today I'm your friend, tomorrow I'm your not. Lama Ganshin is an amazing example of friendship. He had this ability he would say, I gave you my friendship. If you give me back yours, wonderful. If not, that's up to you. I saw, that there were examples of times where Rinpoche gave his friendship, and other times, people who actually were very violent towards him. Once I saw someone yell at him, even in the Gompa, but I've never seen him take away his friendship or ever speak badly about anyone. And, and then afterwards, when that person came back and apologized, and Rinpoche stayed exactly as he was before, full of love and friendship towards this person, without judgment. Rinpoche says, I am your friend. Your happiness is important to me, and I offer you my best, and that's my commitment. What you do, this is not business. This is not an exchange that I give you this because you give me that. Because, if we have an agreement, like, if we're doing business, what would happen, So, okay, what service do I need to furnish you, and how much does it cost? So, to give and have, friendship is not, it's not about giving and taking. No, one gives without any expectations of receiving. So, do not be fickle. Means that it's not that today I'm your friend and tomorrow I'm not. Today I like you, tomorrow I don't like you. Today I'm here for you, tomorrow I'm not. Oh, you said something, you said a word that I didn't like, so I'm not your friend anymore. No, I put myself at your disposal. I'm your friend, and your friend I remain. Have this stability in friendship, and to not flatter also means to be sincere. There's a proverb in Tibetan that says, Shatsekala Tenyame. Shatsa means affection, love. Those who love us. Ka means mouth, and tam means a word, and yen is sweet. Me is a negation. So from the mouth of those who love us, sweet words do not come. It's a little bit old-fashioned. Like, I don't know, maybe your grandparents or someone was quite severe because because they loved you and they tried to guide you. Someone who was strict, someone who loves us is sincere, and they don't overlook. They don't overlook things. They don't overlook things that don't go well. So we shouldn't flatter our friends. We shouldn't try to say, "Oh, how wonderful you are," to try to get something in return. We need to be kind and stable with generosity and love towards our friend. Tak tu sunne tu parcha, but remain forever steadfast and reliable in this friendship. The position that we have as friends stays that. One of the greatest things in a friendship is being able to trust that person as a friend. I know that that person wants my happiness. I know that that person is there if I need. It's not that today yes, tomorrow no, maybe if it's beneficial, if or not, for that person. That means being fickle. No, in our friendship we need to be stable. We should be able to trust. Once a master, Lumpotata is his name, is the master of the Dharmakaya. He's in Bangkok. He was talking in a totally different context. He used a term that made me reflect. He said, "When are you ready to give to others? When you feel when you feel proud enough of yourself in a positive way to make prostrations to yourself. When you feel worthy of prostrating to yourself, at that point you can give to others." One should have this attitude of saying, "I trust myself. I would trust myself as a friend." Could I trust myself as a friend? Yes. Okay. This means that I'm doing in the right way towards others. Ask yourself, in our friendships, as am I behaving towards others the way would I would want others to behave towards me? If yes, good. If not, then we need to change our behavior. So here, do not flatter others or be fickle or disloyal, but remain forever steadfast and reliable. To avoid disparaging people in any way, avoid criticizing others, avoid underlying weaknesses and negative aspects of others, and treat everyone with respect. Kupe seki ne baracha. Treat everyone with respect. I see that this is not always easy. There's an enormous tendency to judge and criticize others, to talk about defects of others that brings no benefit. So, as we said before, to mind your own business. We're not there saying, "Oh, because, he did this and she did that." I mean, we shouldn't spend our time talking about other people's business. Once in Brazil, still talking about Play on Words by Lama Ganchen. They asked Lama Ganchen, "What do you think of homosexuality?" It was there were many, many people. It was a public event. And Rinpoche answered what his position is. For me, homosexual, home sex. What you do at home is your own business. And the end of discussion. In the sense that it doesn't change, what doesn't mean any, doesn't change anything for me what your position is, your intimate details. What's important for me is virtuous interactions, and don't even need to think about it. My choices are my choices and yours are yours. It's not about, if I think your choices are right or wrong. I mean, I can think about how those choices are for me, if it's right for me or not right for me. So we avoid judging others, avoid disparaging others based on their own choices the way they are. It's like saying, oh, you complain because your shoes are too small. No, your shoes are big. Well, maybe for you. I mean, how can I judge your shoes with my feet? It's not possible. So, to not disparage others, we need to not judge them. To not put ourselves in the position of pointing the finger and looking for defects because this one is like this, that one is like that. Why do we like criticizing other people? Because finding a defect in another is like, it's an illusion, but it gives more strength to ourselves. No, I'm not in such a bad position. Look at his situation. So when I push the other down, I think that I'm pulling myself up. So by criticizing is a way to pull oneself up, to say I'm not in such a bad way. But it's not a good self-esteem. It's not the best way to generate self-esteem. So it just doesn't work. It brings it is so much damage, because because then you really stop seeing the positive things and you stop being able to rejoice because you get into a habit of looking for defects in others. That's not at all positive or easy. It's crazy how criticizing is worse than this pandemic. You stop talking badly here and there, and then everyone starts speaking negatively, and it's difficult to find anything positive at all. Once my mother created this habit, for every three she said for every 3 negative pieces of news that she would hear, she would put effort into finding a fourth, that is, finding one that's positive. And it was really hard because we're just not used to it. So I don't know how it is in other places, but here I see that we have this tendency that no matter what we're talking about, we're always looking for the weak aspects of it, and generating an inner state of dissatisfaction instead of looking for them, instead of rejoicing for the positive things. I remember my grandfather, someone who I really admire, as a great example. He's about 98, 97, 98. A few years ago, I went to Brazil. I was there with him. We were at lunch, and at a certain point I said, "Grandfather, how are you?" And he said, "I'm fine." And what about these problems here? Because there was because there was a robbery at his home where they actually put a gun to my grandmother's head, um, um, and they had actually put in a huge alarm system, um, and and so these robbers had managed. They managed to get inside the house, and anyway, that my grandmother was having a hard time sleeping. She wasn't feeling at all safe at home anymore. These guys dressed up as if they were there to fix the alarm system. So they actually got into the house. So I asked my grandfather, this was a month after this robbery had happened. He said, I'm fine. And then I said, and what about those problems? And my grandfather said, yes, yes, they we're facing the problems, Grandma. She's, um, we're looking, you know, we're looking, she's talking to a therapist, but you can't transplant, you can't unroot old trees. It's complicated to move, but he said, to complain is worth is just but complaining's a habit, you know. Uh, And but when I asked him, how he was, and he said he was fine, he was sincere, because complaining is just a habit. And when we fall into that trap of complaining, we are constantly criticizing and constantly in a state of dissatisfaction. And life goes on. And Atisha reminds us, and here, look, in the 11th century, it was already like this, says, avoid disparaging people in any way, avoid criticizing, and treat everyone with respect. Be respectful towards people, no matter who you are with. I see an attitude, for example, and I know I'm going to touch a sore spot here. There's a widespread attitude of criticizing institutions and those who are managing things. When we started the COVID lockdown, for example, if there was a role that I would have never wanted to be in, it would have been to be the prime minister of the country. Not then and not even now. How can I judge the actions where I don't know all the variables? I'm not there. I don't know what's happening. I don't have all the information. And something that I see when we, you know, even just looking at our center, we're a microscopic reality. I mean, you know, um, you know, if if you take any decision, there's a group that is one is happy here and then is unhappy here. I mean, there are always side effects of every decision that's taken. And when I see someone that is in a position that I do not know and I don't have the means to understand that, and I'm not there, how can I correctly make a judgment? So I try not to judge. Instead, we have this habit of constantly criticizing. One or the other, it's like a national pastime. But criticism generates distrust and dissatisfaction. Something I learned with Lama Ganchen too is that once when a journalist went to him and he asked him, "How is it that you have so many friends?" And he said, I have so many friends because I relate with their qualities and not their defects. And he told the story of Ducho. Ducho is a man who lives here in Albagnano, and he went to Lama Ganchen in the 80s when Lama Ganchen was teaching in Pomaya at the Institute of Lama Tsongkhapa, right at the very beginning of him. And Ducho went to him, and he made a tanka for him of the Buddha. And when Lama Ganchen saw it, he said, "Oh, how beautiful, wonderful! Will you make another one for me?" But Rinpoche says that when he saw the tanka, he thought to himself that it was horrible, really bad. I mean, it just was wrong in so many places. But he saw potential. And so instead of saying, "Oh, that's terrible," he said, "That's wonderful. Can you make another one? Maybe try to add this and maybe do like this, like that." But he kept it on the positive. He made another one. He said, "Oh, great. Oh, that's wonderful. I want another one. I want to commission another one." Ducha was so happy that the Lama himself was commissioning a tanka, and even there, Lama was still saying they were so bad. But gradually, they were just getting better and better. They were just always getting better and better until he became a private painter of Lama Ganchen. And this image of Sarasvati, for example, that was made of Ducho. To my right, there's Lama Ganchen himself. That was also made by Ducho. So many beautiful paintings painted by Ducho. The painting that he had in his own room, was always with him, was done by Ducho. And so he sees he says, "I see someone's potential and I invest in that. I don't underline the negative aspects, you know." And then and then someone says, "Well," and then they asked him, "Well, what if you invest in that positive aspect and then the results, don't come?" He said, "Well, I tried. But the point is that no matter who I relate with, I don't underline their shadows and their defects. No, I highlight the, their their brightness. In our small way, when we see people around us, let's try to see their potential and interact with them so that they can relate with their qualities and they can develop their qualities and not relate with them so that they increase their defects or negativities. Now, to conclude, just that last part of this verse, Shenla Dam Nagachek, when giving advice or instructions, do so with compassion and goodwill. Ningche Penshen Deparsha, which means when we find ourselves giving advice to someone else, especially within the spiritual path, but on any level, first of all, we need to be sure that I'm not giving advice to nourish my own ego. And that's not so obvious. Secondly, I need to be sure that I'm giving advice thinking of the good of that person on every level and not use that piece of advice to get something in exchange. This is possible, isn't it? Someone is feeling weak, for example, and I say, "Oh, do like this," thinking that that person is going to do something good for me or good for someone else like this. No. If you ask me for advice, my obligation is to think of your well-being first and foremost, your needs. So when we give advice to others, we need to do it with compassion, with love, where the happiness and avoiding the suffering of the other becomes priority, and we need to think of their needs and their benefits, what's beneficial for them, and it's not a game to nourish our own ego. A little bit like what's the sign of a good psychologist, for example? Mhm. The one who um, um, the one who can end the therapy. At a certain point, said, "Okay, my job has been done." But sometimes a codependency can be created. So I need you to come to me. You need me, and we maintain something that goes on for a lifetime. It's possible. It's also possible for a virtuous relationship between patient and psychologist can go on, for a lifetime. That's possible too. Um, but 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 a codependent relationship, an unhealthy codependent relationship can also happen. If someone comes to ask for advice, sometimes one feels nourished by the feeling that they're the one who is called upon to help. We should not allow for this to happen. If there's someone who needs help, we need to think of their benefit, not of our own ego or our benefits. Emotionally speaking, materially speaking, socially speaking, on any level. I think this is quite clear. I think that with this we can conclude for today, for this morning. We're going to stop now for lunch and then we'll come back. It's time for our dedications. Just to conclude, let's remember that this text by Atisha is not a text to be studied, but it's the guidelines for life. So choose the verse that is closest to you at this time in your life and take it as guidelines. And on a practical level, today, who would like to ask me a question or to say hello? If you're staying for the afternoon, then please come later. Um, so for the kitchen, then we don't have time to have lunch, etc. If you cannot come back in for the afternoon session and you'd like to ask a question or say hello, you can. Dedication. At dawn or at dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness. At dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness. Lama Michel Rinpoche, Lama Michel Rinpoche, Lama Michel Rinpoche, Kemne Kuntu Sumo Shupa Go, Jusanko Paki Prashipa, Puchan Temperature Yamada, Negate Mata, Stefan, Mame Shema Shupa Go, have a good lunch. Thank you, everyone.